and welcome back. We are now on episode 13 of our podcast series, and we had some fun with our last one as we identified who we believe are our top 5 athletes. Now we move back into some motivational things. We talk about a subject that Joe is very, very, very important to me, and that I've spent a lot of time meditating on, and this is going to be our SHIP series, leadership, ownership, and mentorship. And just as the ability series was really important during these times, just as the IAO series was critical during times like these, when else is leadership more at the forefront or more important or more necessary than it is during times of crisis like we're in now?
No, I think this is the perfect series to roll out at this time. These 3 topics are something I'm still learning, and I know you have a much better grasp of. So it's been interesting to me as I've taken a look at each of those 3 and really get to understand what those words mean and what that's all about. There couldn't be a more appropriate time to have strong leaders in all walks of life, and I'm excited to talk about where you see leaders, how you identify leaders, what makes a good leader, and see what where that's taking you. I know you have extensive training in leadership training, and you've really gotten into that topic. So this will be a perfect series to roll out.
Well, my hope is that at the end of this brief, 15, 16, 18 minutes here, that our kids can walk away, whoever's watching it, walk away and say, okay, and this makes a little bit more sense when somebody tells me I need to be a better leader. I think, speaking as a coach, athletic director, I think a lot of times, even as a parent, we tell our kids, you're not doing a good enough job being a leader, or you need to be a better leader. And they hear it, but they don't necessarily understand what that means. Well, what does that mean? I need to do better. And I don't think that I don't do a good enough job of explaining exactly what that means to be a good leader.
Yeah, I still don't completely understand it. So I think that's a great way to put it. The silent leader, or lead by example, or the alpha leader, or it's a political leader, a leader of a sports team, the leader of a family. You hear that word thrown out in so many different ways, but if people really taken a look at the root of it and what makes that, and the more research and just reading up on it that I did, I found that they come in all shapes and sizes and forms, and it's not always what you think would be a leader and the people who demonstrate those qualities. It's such a broad subject that's actually pretty interesting in that the ways that you can lead, even if you think you're not.
And I think where great leadership begins, and believe me, there needs to be self-leadership too, not just leadership over others. You got to lead yourself first. I think it begins with a vision that is clear, concise, able to be articulated. I think there are some people out there who want to lead and they have a vision, but they can't get that vision from their brain out of their mouth so that people understand. And I also think that the vision needs to be relatable. If you're speaking in front of a group, trying to lead a group, and you can't relate to them and what you're talking about, or relate the message you're trying to send to them, they're going to tune you out, and it's going to be a much harder road to travel to be a great leader if they can't relate to what you're saying to them. So clear, concise, relatable, and able to be articulated. That's the kind of vision that a leader needs to start.
I have written in my notes right here, people think they are leading, but have not gained the respect of the masses or the people they're trying to lead. And it's actually something we had touched on when you had said about when we addressed the students in the cafeteria a couple years back for our fall kickoff. And it was actually in the Hard Knocks with the Tampa Bay Bucks, I believe. But it was, you have to serve in order to lead, and I think that's exactly what you're saying there. You've got to have crawled through and fought through things and earn the respect of those around you if you want to lead them. Because if you haven't, they're going to write you off like, you're talking about that, but you don't do any of these things. You really have to set the example, in my opinion, as I've looked into it more, in order to gain the respect of others. And once you've done that, you have the potential to lead, but there's still work to be done.
Yeah, I think that vision, and this kind of rolls into what you just said, that vision is based in a very deep rooted system of belief within that leader. You know, your vision is something that you've walked down the path of your vision thousands of times in your head over and over and over again. You've drawn the pathway. You know every single checkpoint along the pathway that allows you to know that your vision is becoming a reality. And oftentimes, I think great leaders have probably gone through some adversity. I mean, we all go through adversity, but oftentimes great leaders have used that vision or that deep-rooted personal belief to get them through, successfully overcome some sort of adversity. And that's why it becomes so personal, so deep-rooted, because they know that this can work for someone else. It's just about being able to put that vision into a concise a way to make people explain it. So a deep-rooted personal system of belief is what creates that vision.
And it's almost like they have to have personally, kind of experience some things and learn some lessons along the way to kind of take in those qualities and learn what you're trying to put out there. I think it may take observing some of the leaders that you've had in your life and taking a look at what they did well and what they didn't do well, and trying to shape that into your own unique style of leading. I also think this is an appropriate third series, because when I think about a leader, it's definitely someone who improvises, adapts, and overcomes, and certainly holds themselves accountable, are very reliable, and can be vulnerable in situations to let their group of people know that they're with them and we're in this together, is kind of how I, especially in a time like this, is how I look at a leader, as someone who doesn't really consider themselves a leader. I think I'm slowly learning those tools, and you've been a great mentor, if we want to throw that word out there, that we'll be discussing down the road. But it can take people like yourself to see what a leader looks like in that role, and then trying to fine-tune ways that you can kind of build your own leadership. I don't know if there's one, common algorithm to set apart leadership. I think it's kind of what you make it.
I totally agree. There are 100 different styles of leadership, right? Very rarely do you find two leaders who are exactly the same. But if I broke down what I think makes successful leaders successful, they have the ability to motivate, they have the ability to evaluate, and they have the ability to educate while all in constant control of their emotions. There are some people who can lead really well when the ship is on on calm waters. You know what I mean? But as soon as you hit some turbulence, as soon as a storm comes and something doesn't go quite right, or part of the ship breaks down, there's a leak here, and the leader and that person allows things to get away from them because they can't control their own emotions. That's where, that's where I started looking at somebody and say, maybe they're not the leader that I thought they were. So great leaders can motivate people and get them riled up, but they can also educate and impart knowledge onto people that makes sense, and evaluate. And I don't mean evaluate people they're leading. I mean evaluate situations. Great leaders are great psychologists, great social psychologists. They don't necessarily understand the brain maybe, but they understand people. They understand timing. They understand location, meaning where they're at whenever they're leading, which is important. I think people overlook that, where you're at. They understand the personnel they're dealing with, and they understand the situation that they're dealing with. And all those things play a part into the way that they respond and the way they communicate with people. And great leaders are able to be great social psychologists, great educators, great motivators, but great evaluators of what's called for at that moment. And a couple examples I think of, I taught a leadership course back at Monmouth Regional High School. Every incoming freshman had to take it. And I always remember this one great example we used to use is, all right, you have a beach house, Joe, and you go away for the weekend and I have to watch your beach house. I call you up and say, hey, there's a leak in the bottom floor and it's just filling up with water. Well, if you're sitting on the other side of the phone screaming at me, what the heck did you do? Why didn't you do this? Then you're not a great leader. The first question is, have we fixed the problem? Or here's how first thing I need you to do, Jace, go downstairs, turn the water off. And that so many leaders overlook that simple aspect because they get so caught up in the emotional piece to, I can't believe you're flooding my basement, you moron. I can't. Meanwhile, the basement's still flooding. Like, turn the water off. And one of the greatest examples of that is 2016 state championship baseball team. We've told the story 100 times. We're in the state finals. We're up by a run. There's 2 outs, and we're in the field, right? Bottom of the 7th. Deep ball, runners on second and third, ball hit deep into the shortstop who kind of double clutches. Meanwhile, the runner on third scores as it's a bang play at first base. Umpire calls the runner at first, safe, run scores. The entire Parsippany team and their fans are going ballistic because they think we're going into extra innings. Coach John Oler, he walked out of the dugout. It was mayhem. I remember sitting up there, and it looked like a storm was rolling through. They're screaming. Our people going nuts. It was wild. And John Oler just kind of casually walks out of the dugout, walks over to the first base umpire and says, "Sir, we're in a major situation right now. Could you just please check with the home plate umpire to make sure we get the call right?" This is the biggest moment of of all time as far as we're concerned, our first state title. And they walk over, and what do? They change the call. They reverse it. They call them out. State championship is won, albeit on an incredible finish and call. But the emotional stability with which Coach Oler approached that situation. How many times have you seen in baseball when the opposing manager comes sprinting out of the dugout, hat flying, arms flying, in the face of the umpire, screaming, yelling? It just creates much more mayhem. That I think that was a great example of social psychology at its best, to bring everything back down to even keel. I think great leaders know how to do that.
And that ties into your example of the leadership course as well. That person the homeowner on the phone didn't take the tone or how they were presenting it. They immediately went to the problem. So rather than getting defensive or like, well, who are you talking to with that kind of tone? They just blocked that out, understanding that it's a trying situation. And rather than correcting that, let's correct the problem right now, and then we can address that later. Coach Oler used the same type of tactic. That umpire is used to someone storming out there in their face. I don't care if it's the high school level or professional. They're giving them the business, even though that's someone's son, that's a dad, that's a regular person who makes mistakes as well. And it was almost like Coach knew that going out there, that I'm just going to have this conversation. If it doesn't get changed, it doesn't get changed. We're going to keep battling our way through this, and we're going to win this thing no matter what. But let me just go out there and have that friendly conversation to see if maybe with some help we can get this thing right. And it really is one of the most unbelievable moments I've ever been a part of. I've never seen a call reversed in baseball, especially on the biggest stage. But number one, he had a valid point. Number two, he didn't point fingers. And number three, he came out with a certain calm that even made me feel good about it. I was like, we might have a shot here. Like, what he's doing right now is something I hadn't seen before. And I think that's where don't just talk about it, be about it. In that moment, he showed all his players too. Number one, I've got your back, but let me show you how to address this while keeping your calm in a very tense situation.
So we talked about vision. We talked about being able to motivate, evaluate, and educate. We talked about being a social psychologist to be a great leader. Another important aspect, in my opinion, of being a great leader, and this goes back to, this is the Clyde Folsoms of the world, the Linda Deckers of the world, is the ability to grind. The ability to day in and day out set a standard, hold yourself and everyone else that you're responsible for to that standard, regardless of the situation that's going on around you, regardless of how you feel, regardless of how busy you may be or how tired you may be. It's getting up every single day. And I've heard you say, set the standard, setting that standard and forcing yourself and others and bringing other people to reach that standard, even when they don't think they can. That is super hard to do. It is exhausting to do that. And if you don't have that vision and that wholehearted belief in that vision, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to break. You're going to give in. because oftentimes to be a great leader, you're gonna have to go through some real hardships, and it's gonna take time. And so when I think of obviously the Linda Deckers of the world, Clyde Folsoms of the world, who did that grind for so long to bring people to their best, highest possible level at a standard that was so high. I think the ability to grind on a daily basis and that commitment to a cause, to a vision, is a critical piece to being a successful leader.
It's like they built their foundation and took their licks while they laid each brick of that foundation, understanding that people were going to attack their character, attack how they operate, how they interact. And rather than letting that phase them, it's almost like they just kept using that as another building block, another building block. So essentially, you're saying that even two people that we admire tremendously, that they were learning along the way how to continually improve their leadership. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think that is, like we said earlier on, like different leaders are built differently, but they all have the ability to adapt. They can adapt as time goes on. And I think the last piece to the puzzle of being a great leaders that I've known are architects and engineers of great relationships. They know how to build great relationships. They can sit down with 100 different kids from 100 different backgrounds, one-on-one. And when that kid or that person, that employee, that whoever walks out of that meeting, they're saying, I really have a lot of faith in that person. I really trust that person. I really like that person. That's somebody that I want to follow. I think the elite leaders have that ability to be architects of successful relationships and know how to have passion and compassion for the people that they're working with.
That's a great way to put it. And I know we're going to wrap up here shortly, but let's take this and turn this into, I just got voted team captain. A captain is supposed to be a leader, but I don't know much about leadership or ways to go about it. You know, what can we do, or what can our students take from this to kind of help them into that role, to be a true captain, a true leader of your team?
Well, I think, I had a young student athlete ask me just the other day, coach, there are, 7 or 8 people in the team that I play on that just won't buy in. How do I get them to buy in? I said, well, have you called them? Have you had a conversation with them? Do you know anything about their background? Do you know what they're dealing with in a situation like a pandemic? Do you know what their home life is like? If you're not willing, and this is hard. And we talked about this in leadership council that we have each season. If you're not willing to be a selfless teenager in high school, you cannot be a great leader in high school. You can't. If you're not willing to be selfless and take some time away from the things that you want to do, to commit time and invest time with your teammates or somebody you care about, they're never going to follow you. They're never going to buy in because they don't trust that you have their best interest at heart, because you don't know what they're walking into when they go home, and you don't know what they're dealing with behind the scenes. Once you make that connection and you know about somebody and they believe that you want to learn about them and know about them, they'll follow you anywhere because they know that you genuinely care. And that is at the crux of it all. And that's got to be part of your vision if you're going to be a great leader, is to make sure the people you're working with know that you care and that you're invested in them as people.
That's awesome, man. It's powerful stuff, and I continue to learn from you based on your knowledge of leadership, and I hope anybody listening to this is starting to look at that, because right now more than ever, especially, you've always said it. It's been one of your quotes that the world needs more leaders, and there's a perfect opportunity in a trying time to really, number one, learn about it, but also rise to that occasion. Check in on those that you care about, or even those you've never talked to before. You don't know what type of impact that would make. And all of a sudden, you're laying down your own foundation of people that now trust you, because, man, even in tough times, he didn't write me off. She still thought about me. She still followed up. And now all of a sudden you're putting yourself in a spot that maybe you do get voted team captain or a new leader of your sports team because of the things you did behind closed doors when we're all trapped inside and not much else is going on. And I hope that's the message the kids are taking from it. And it's certainly something I've used over the past 5 weeks to try to establish myself in a new role. You can really take a lot from it.
And you got to do it every day. You got to do it every day. So great start, man. Leadership's something, man. I could spend 5-6 days talking about leadership, but good way to kick us off in our ship series. We'll pull up next time, episode 14. We'll attack ownership, and really kind of goes hand in hand with accountability, but there are differences. So I'm excited to dive into that with you. Mr. Panchella, thanks so much, man. I miss you. Stay healthy over there, man. Mr. Kirshner, thanks so much for making this happen. And thanks to everybody out there. We get text messages, emails, and all kinds of stuff about people watching the show. So keep watching. We're doing this for you out there because we want to help us all get through this thing. So have a great day, Eagle Nation, and we'll see you next time.